Hey guys, Matt McNulty here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know it's been a couple days here, but we're back on schedule, and it's great to have you back. As you just heard, the audio and some pictures and artistic representations, that was the Max Headroom signal intrusion incident of 1987. And I thought it was a really cool story. It's got, its basis in journalism. It's kind of almost like pirate journalism, because essentially there was these signal intruders, which are basically broadcast pirates that intruded on local Chicago news and sports channel affiliates and took over the channel. And it caused a whole, shitstorm of just how do we protect the airwaves, how do we find these people that are even pirating the airwaves? It was a big deal because, as you'll find out, the people that were behind this incident, this 1987 Max Headroom incident, they never got caught, despite the fact that the FCC and the FBI were looking into who was behind the signal intrusion. It was that big a deal. And I just found it to be a really cool story. It's not necessarily something that I think is particularly relevant to today's journalism world and industry, but I think that the history is pretty interesting, and when I learned of it a little while ago, I was like, man, I never heard about that. That is a really cool story. So I thought I would share it with people that may not know about what happened and its significance, and just, what the whole situation was. So going back to November 22nd, 1987, the first signal intrusion began. It was the same pirates that had a Max Headroom mask. And if anyone knows who Max Headroom is, it was a character in the 80s. If it's before your time, you wouldn't really know. He was a spokesman for New Coke. He was kind of like a made-up character. Like he was supposed to be like an artificial intelligence, kind of like a wisecracking, pop culture figure. And he had his own television series. He was like the New Coke spokesperson. He was like ubiquitous in the 1980s. If you were in the 80s watching TV, you would have definitely seen Max Headroom, that character. He was just kind of like, almost like, the way I would describe it is like Jim Carrey from The Mask, like big expressive face, big chin, huge features, very like kind of exaggerated facial features, very snappy, witty kind of personality, but kind of a manic personality. It was a weird character that for whatever reason really took off in the 80s, and then just kind of like after the New Coke thing didn't really pan out, he wasn't seen too much after that. But so the choice of that mask, of the Max Headroom mask that the pirate wore, is definitely deliberate. Max Headroom kind of being like a symbol, an icon of kind of like 80s global consumerism, and kind of just like corporate greed. He was a spokesperson for so many big companies and international conglomerates, that there was a very deliberate choice to go with the Max Headroom mask. So I would say, if you don't know the character, definitely Google him or YouTube him. You can see some videos and stuff from the 80s, and you can get a better idea of what that character was. But there was a reason why the pirates chose to wear that mask. And as you heard, it was a 90-second signal intrusion that really is the story here. But before that happened, it was a 28-second attempt by the same pirates that they attempted. And they did take it over for 28 seconds, but they were bumped off the broadcast because this was during the day when there was more engineers and operators that were available to take back the airwaves from the pirates. And it was during a sportscast by a sports reporter, and his name was Dave Rowan. And as he was doing his sports recap of Dan Rowan, I'm sorry, he was doing a Chicago's Bears sportscast, and he was interrupted in between his sportscast with this 28-second piracy, essentially, of a man wearing a Max Headroom mask. Very weird. People all over Chicago saw it while they were watching the Bears game and watching the halftime game and sportscast, and they were like, what the heck was that? That's the weirdest thing I've seen on TV. And even Dan Rowan said himself, after the channel was able to get the airwaves back, he said, well, if you're wondering what happened, so am I. He had no idea what happened. He didn't know what was going on. He saw that, was just as confused as the viewers. No one really knew what was going on. Then a few hours later, those same pirates, after a lot of the operators and engineers left work for the night, this was later in the evening, when there was just like some syndicated television. It was actually like a Doctor Who episode that this actually, the big 90-second interruption took place. And it was later in the night, so there wasn't as many people there working at the channel to get the channel back. By the time they realized what was going on, it was kind of out of their control. So the real piracy that really is the story, in kind of like a little bit of kind of pirate journalism history and kind of cyberpunk journalism history, cyberpunk history. They took over the airwaves for a full 90 seconds wearing that same Max Headroom mask, and they bragged about stealing the channel, and they made references to New Coke. They said he had to catch the wave, and he threw the can in his pirate broadcast, and very bizarre at the end of it. You know, he has his buttocks exposed with some chick with a fly swatter hitting it. I mean, this was on like basic cable, so anyone who was watching that episode of Doctor Who in syndication that night would have seen this on their TV and been like, oh my god, what is this? How did this get on my TV? This is horrendous. It was weird, it was bizarre, it was definitely not FCC. They would have, you know, there was a lot of weird adult humor involved with this 90-second pirate broadcast. And just like that, after a minute and a half, it was this kind of very weird, bizarre intrusion, signal intrusion in people's televisions that they were probably just scratching their heads like, what in the world am I looking at? And just like that, after 90 seconds, the pirates themselves ended their piracy broadcast and returned the channel back to the news affiliate station, or the TV broadcast affiliate. So they didn't get bumped off the airwaves after the you know, FCC or whoever realized that they shut down their own piracy broadcast just to make a point. I'm not really sure. The interesting thing is that despite the fact that the FCC and the FBI, they were going hard after the people who were involved with this. They wanted to know how they did it, because this was in 1987. You know, it wasn't so easy. There wasn't digital airwaves. I mean, you would have not only had the expertise and the know-how in order to run a TV station or a broadcast, you would have also had to have the equipment to do so. And these pirates had all of that and were able to take over a big market, news market, television market, for 90 seconds, a channel for 90 seconds, which is like just unheard of. And you really don't hear that too much about it. There's other instances here and there that happened, but this is kind of like the big one. Very bizarre, but they were never caught. No one ever came forward and took credit for it. It's just a weird kind of little afternote in kind of a bizarre little footnote in the history of broadcast television and journalism. There's just not a whole lot else to say about it other than it's just kind of a weird piece of history, and that just learning about it, I was like, man, that's really crazy that there are people out there, even in the 80s, that had the expertise and the technical, you know, apparatuses to actually like hijack and take over a TV channel. I mean, that's just like, that's crazy to me. You know, they were facing a $100,000 fine and up to a year in prison. That was what the FCC and FBI had put forth while they were investigating this piracy. But they never got caught, and that's just crazy. But it also really became a big, kind of like a springboard and kind of like a big moment for the cyberpunk hacking scene. And obviously, like throughout the 90s, hacking was like a big part of like, it was like a trope, you know, in movies and television and stuff. But there was definitely a scene of hackers, and there was definitely people involved with stuff that was nefarious to the broadcast and journalism world, and that definitely disrupted things, whether it was just for the sake of pure chaos or whether it was the sake of just getting some type of whatever message across. It was kind of like a very influential moment in the cyberpunk hacking scene, and it bred a lot of kind of people who were, you know, interested in that type of work, you know, kind of clandestine broadcast work. So yeah, just a really interesting, bizarre moment in television and broadcast history. I just found it to be really interesting. I'm going to link the actual video below. I did not include it in this video for copyright reasons, obviously, so that's why I just have the audio and some pictures. that were, available to use. So I would definitely say check it out and look into it a little bit more. It's a really interesting, bizarre little footnote in the history of broadcast television and journalism history. So uh, otherwise, hope everyone's having a great week. And I'll definitely catch up with everyone soon. I'll be having another video up within the next few days, so make sure you check that out. Take it easy, guys. Peace.